Guys, welcome to the Dolan K podcast. Today, we have a special interview here with one of the IDF soldiers that has been fighting since the October 7th attacks have unfolded here in Israel. He was with him and his unit. They were some of the first soldiers into Gaza, into the ground operations post October 7th. And I think you're in for a treat, guys. Today, we have Efraim. He is not a how we say a tzabar. So thankfully, because of his American upbringing, we're actually going to get some understandable storytelling from his side that hopefully the audience around the world will be able to understand. Because we have a lot of good stories here, a lot of wonderful veterans that have done some amazing things during this war. But for me, I'm trying to get people that you can actually understand and hear their story and really connect with what they have to say. So without further ado, Efraim, uh, why don't you tell the audience here a little bit about yourself, how you found yourself leading up to your entry into Gaza with your unit? Where'd you grow up? What's your upbringing a little bit like? Give us a little bit of insight into yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show. It's always an honor to share my testimony. I was born in New York, Long Island, New York. Uh, when I was a year old, my family we moved to Israel. After 10 years, we moved back to the States and had my whole childhood here and there in Israel and in the US. After graduating high school, I made Aliyah. I came back to Israel and I went to a pre-military school in the Golan Heights called Keshet. After graduating from my pre-military school, I then drafted to the IDF, to the Combat Engineering Corps. About a year and 8 months in my service, I was an EOD specialist. After that, I went to commander's school, where I became a commander, where I went and specialized even further in in explosives, EOD, landmine disposal, all the fun stuff. And if it goes boom, I like it. And there was another course within the commander's course to become a D9 commander. I was sent to that course where I asked for it and I thought it was pretty cool. So I became also a D9 commander. Uh, After 6 months of my continuous mandatory service, um, October 7th broke out. And yeah, from there was where all the fun began.
So essentially, you started the war not as a reservist, but active military, like active
Correct.
duty.
I,
Still,
w- I was in active duty.
yeah,
Um, 7th of October, I was actually on a military leave. I had a week off.
yeah.
Um, just like the whole country, and I guess even the whole world, it caught us completely off guard. Uh, Not to say that I wasn't expecting at some time something to happen, um, but I guess it's definitely caught us off guard.
So you essentially made Aliyah by yourself, meaning that the rest of your family were back in the U.S.,
Correct.
right?
My whole
And so,
family was in New York. I came
yeah,
as what you call a lone soldier. A
yeah,
lone soldier is someone who comes from abroad to join the IDF.
yeah.
Without any parents or guardians in the country. And yeah, that's exactly what I did.
So essentially, your family is watching everything unfold from the United States, from the news reels and so on, and you find yourself in the heart of one of the basically one of the longest wars that Israel has been conducting uh, ever since the founding of the state of Israel.
Yeah, I
What
mean,
what 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 was that like for your
it.
family?
So my parents didn't fully understand what my position was in the IDF, even the majority of Israel didn't really understand what a D9 was, and also I wasn't going to tell my parents what my position was in the army. Uh, After we invaded, uh, at some point they started to learn a little more about what I was doing, and that's when they understood the magnitude of the danger that I was in.
Hmm. And any of your family have military background of any kind?
So we're four generations military in my family.
Hmm.
My great grandfather was actually a prisoner of war in World War One. And my grandfather, both of them were in the United States Army, World War Two. One of them took part in the invasion of Normandy. And then my father, he was actually in Tier 1 Special Forces in Israel. He was in the first years of Oketz, before he was even called Oketz. He's of the first soldiers to open the unit. That's, for anyone who doesn't know, the K9 unit for the IDF. And he was dispatched to be under Seret Matkal. And he has incredible stories. He
Hmm.
too was wounded in his service. He was in a hostage rescue mission, my father, called Misgavam. 5 terrorists infiltrated the IDF border from Lebanon. On Really, we're coming up to the anniversary right now, was on Passover night, and he was jumped from his house, called up to go and save these children that were taken hostage. And that was actually the first operation that the K9 unit Oketz ever properly took part of, and that's what put them on the map.
Hmm.
And I grew up in a house where, with all these war stories, every man in my family goes and joins the military. When you come from a background where so much um, military history, that's something that definitely pushes you. Me myself, I was also named after my great uncle, Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Army, World War II, fought in the Pacific. So it's something that definitely I grew up with, and gave me a massive push to I guess fight for freedom and protect the innocent from the non-innocent.
Yeah. So just going back now to growing up, were you into sports of any kind? Were you into anything, like competitive? Like
So
what was that like? What led up to leading, I guess, to your choice to be in a combat position versus anything else you could have chosen in the military, right? I mean,
right.
there's lots of options.
So I mean, I'm huge into soccer. I grew up in Israel as a kid, so that's a big sport here in the country. I don't think sports is something that led me to my military service and to where I wanted to be. But when I was a kid living in Israel, I moved to Efrat in Gush Etzion during the
Hmm.
second Intifada as a kid, and during the Gaza disengagement, when Israel took Jews out of Gaza, and I was surrounded by this at a very young age. And then my family moved to another city in Israel where everyone in our community were high-ranking generals in the IDF, and all their children were my best friends. So I grew up in a very militaristic environment, in an environment that was also very hostile. So it was something that from my roots I understood was going to lead me into becoming a combat soldier and even to become a commander.
Hmm. And just to be clear for the audience, when we say commander here in Israel, we're talking about an NCO course. So it's a non-commissioned officer. You don't have ranks up here. You have the ranks down here.
Yeah.
Um, and essentially, what it does is it gives you leadership skills so that the military can basically put you over a small group of soldiers or to be in charge of, like in your case, a D9, right?
Right.
Is that essentially what your commander course kind of focused on for the combat engineers? Is that you'll what is that like? What does that mean to be a commander of a D9? How does that work?
So I will say this, I guess, in the most humble of ways. It's very unique position in the military, and anyone who's studied the war here in Israel understands how unique a D9 is on the battlefield. Uh, Most people become a commander. They'll become a commander over just a couple of soldiers and out in infantry world. But the D9s, we leave the infantry world and we go into the armored vehicle world, which is a whole different world. And also, when you're in a D9 and you're sent to do engineering missions, which is 100% of the time, when you're in the engineering part of the battle or the operation, you're now in charge of the entire operation for the most part. A company commander from infantry, he might be in charge of of the operation. But when it comes to the tactical part of the battlefield, where they need to bring in a D9, then you take over and you essentially are now in charge of so much more than just 5 people. And at such a low rank, you have so much more um, power on the battlefield.
Hmm. So essentially, it's a lot of responsibility because the combat engineers essentially, to my knowledge, any ground operation that happens, when we're preparing our troops, our gear, our tanks, our APCs, our men, RPGs, and whatever is needed, right? You guys are essentially already operating, and you're already getting the how to say the area of infiltration for the foot
Right.
soldiers. You're preparing the way essentially, right?
Right. So combat engineer, we have a saying: combat engineering is always first. Every mission, every battle, you will see a combat engineer opening the way, and there's a reason for that. The enemy, the terrorists, what they do is they use guerrilla warfare tactics, and they'll use all the infrastructure and all the terrain for their benefit. And how do they do that? Let's just take an example. They'll take a road. In the road, they'll take explosives. They'll put it under the road. We're talking civilian roads here.
Mhm.
And they know that the IDF will come onto that road, and they hope that the explosive will work and detonate and take out as many um, soldiers as possible and wound as many as possible, and so they could ambush the motorcade, the convoy that is coming. And how does the IDF prevent that? That's the use of the D9s. We come in first. Well, before I get to that, I mean, I don't hope the explain to the audience what a D9 is, because
Yeah, what
I'm
is a
sure.
D9?
Right. So a D9 is a massive, massive bulldozer. The IDF brought bulldozers from Caterpillar in the United States, brought them to Israel, and we Guccified them with armor. We took the whole cabin from the D9, and we completely armored it, bulletproof glass. We added another chair or seat for a commander in the vehicle. And this D9, this bulldozer, as we call it, a killdozer, has a massive bucket in the front of it, and it plows the land. And as it's plowing, it it does get rid of the IEDs that are implanted. And it's probably the vehicle that saved more lives than any other in the war, and prevented casualties and mass casualties for that matter, because it does such an incredible job at detonating the explosives that they put into the ground and diffusing them, and that prevents infantrymen and tanks from blowing up. Now it's a massive chunk of steel,
Mhm.
so when it goes on an IED, it blows up. Most of the times, nothing happens. Sometimes it'll destroy the vehicle, and in the blue moon, sadly, the soldiers will get wounded. But that's essentially what it is this massive, massive bulldozer that just eats up explosives and everything and anything.
So does the front scoop essentially take the blast? Is that what it is? The way it's
So
engineered? How exactly does that work?
we take the bucket, we stick it in the ground about
You
30
call it
centimeters.
bucket.
Yeah, the bucket, the front is called a bucket. We take it,
Yeah.
and it's almost comical, the vehicle, when you see
Mhm.
it. But when you see it in battle operate, you understand how much power this thing has and how essential it is on the battlefield.
Mhm.
Um, what how we use it, we take the bucket, we stick it into the ground, 30 centimeters in the ground, and we start pushing forward. Now, there's a lot of horsepower, there's a lot of torque power in this vehicle. It's a bulldozer. And the IDF saw that we could use bulldozers to fight urban warfare. Also, non-urban warfare, but for this matter, for Gaza, we saw it was the perfect tool. And see, in the civilian world, bulldozers are intended to plow land. They're not intended to destroy infrastructure and demolish buildings. The IDF looked at the D9s and said, this can be an incredible tool to destroy infrastructure. And it really does an incredible job at doing that. And also the reason we use it is because Hamas uses 100% of the infrastructure in Gaza for terrorism. So
Mhm.
that's when the D9 comes in to destroy the infrastructure, because without infrastructure, they don't have a way to fight. And the second you take away buildings and houses, like we saw Sinwar was hiding in a building. We
Mhm.
started destroying all the buildings in Rafah, and he had to jump from building to building because there weren't any buildings to run into anymore. And that's how
So,
we fight the
so, so
terrorists.
so that's part of the strategy, essentially. Would you say that what you guys are doing is you're kind of um, minimizing the structures, the urban structures that the terrorists can hide in? Is that why there's so much destruction in Gaza?
Exactly. We're not going in to destroy Gaza because we hate everybody and this and that, and whatever the media says. We go
Hmm.
in. Everything we do in Gaza is done with strategy. We
Hmm.
know, and from personal stories, I've had RPGs fired at me from hospital buildings, from school buildings, from children's rooms, and we know that Hamas hides in these buildings, and the only way to prevent them from hiding in a building is to destroy it. Now, what we
Hmm.
could do, which is what we did in the last Gaza war, or and for that matter, for any of the combative theaters that we did in Gaza, we would send infantry troops into the building. But many times, those infantrymen would die because the buildings were booby trapped. So we also saw that there was no need to actually send in infantrymen. We could just bring D9s and even excavators and prevent having to send in troops, and that also prevented more people from having to die.
Yeah. So essentially, what the terrorists are doing is they use ambush tactics. They'll fire from a building at our troops, and then they'll try to basically draw that unit in to the structure, which, like you were saying, is booby trapped. And essentially, we've learned from that you want to avoid getting sucked into a gun battle that isn't a real gun battle, right? It's essentially they're just trying to get you to come into that
Right.
area that they have pre ambushed for these guys, and then what you guys are trying to do is mitigate that danger by basically plowing down that structure where the terrorists had fired
Right.
out of.
Well,
Yeah.
I once had a scenario when I was in Rimal, not too far from Kikar, Palestine, which is Palestine Square in Gaza, and we were a couple of blocks out. We were going to battle, and we were D9s. We were the first ones in the battle. We were opening up the road. We made it to an intersection, and I'm about to go and run over this vehicle because they plant explosives in vehicles. So we have to make sure that even the vehicles are destroyed. And my D9 partner comes, he cuts me off, and he gets to the vehicle first. And the vehicle blew up, and it completely destroyed the D9. And we realized, and to those who don't understand, if a D9 is destroyed by an IED,
That's
it means
massive.
that it was a massive explosion. It would
Oh
completely
yeah.
destroy the D9,
Yeah.
and we also knew that we were about to get ambushed.
Hmm.
And this, by the way, this was on the news. This On this mission we were being sent to was to go and get the head of a hostage. They were selling a head on the black market. This was all over the news, and this was that very mission. And we knew that on this mission that we are probably going to have an intense battle. Um, we were ambushed right after the D9 blew up, and
Hmm.
sadly, a soldier fell in battle. They fired an RPG from one of the buildings. Now, they're not firing RPGs from military outposts, they're firing them from civilian homes.
Hmm.
Every house, every single piece of infrastructure that is used in Gaza is used to kill Jews, each and every single house.
Hmm. Yeah. Did you see any terrorists wearing military outfits, or would you say that most of what you saw was in civilian clothes of some sort?
In the 6 months I did in Gaza before I was wounded, not only did I never see a terrorist wear their tactical uniform, they were only in civilian uniform. 99% of the times, there are very few times I could think of where a terrorist was actually close to me. The terrorists would come and shoot from a building, almost like Pop Goes the Weasel. It would
Hmm.
fire an RPG and then go run into a tunnel or back into the infrastructure. And I had a very good friend. He sadly fell in battle, and he was one of my company commanders. And we spoke about how we were being every time we were attacked, we wouldn't even see the actual terrorist from close. We'd have to zoom in with our cameras or whatever technology we had to actually
Hmm.
see where they were firing from. And when we would zoom in, we'd find out they're shooting from the room of their children, or not even, it could be some random child's house that it's not even their home.
Right, right.
And and that's exactly what we were fighting.
So yeah, essentially, they're using civilian infrastructure. They're using civilian clothing to cloak and hide behind the persona that these are not actual combatants. They know that the IDF is a moral military and that we look for combatants. We look for a clear, clean kill, as you'd say, right?
Yeah.
You know, we try to avoid civilian casualties at all costs. I imagine for you with your large D9
Yeah.
and every move that you make, every structure that you destroy, you have huge weight of responsibility in your head.
Well,
And like you said, you're not looking to just destroy structures for the fun of
right,
it, but essentially the terrorists have hunkered themselves down deep into the civilian population and also wearing civilian clothing, right?
right.
So that's what they're using to try to demoralize us, to try to play this cat and mouse game. They're not real combatants like they show on TV, like they show
No,
on their
they're
footage.
they- they're
They're not
they're they're
they're not
animals,
yeah, they're not right.
monsters.
Yeah, I would say monsters. Animals
Right.
are
Correct.
wonderful, by the way, next to
Yeah.
these monsters that I've engaged with in Gaza.
I could tell you a story. We were with
Yeah.
551, which is the Commander Reservist Unit, and we were looking for our tunnel, and we were in a place called the Beit Hanun, northeastern Gaza, and this was probably the most booby-trapped place I ever went to. And I was actually talking to someone about this today, and I completely forgot about the story until I was going through my pictures on my phone, and we were called up on the radio. They told us that there is a tree log that has explosive material in it. And they saw with drone footage the day before that Hamas took a dog on a leash, attached it to the log, put explosives on the log. Why? Because they thought an
Yep.
IDF soldier who is so innocent and pure and just will come and untie this poor dog
Yep.
from the log and set it free. And when
Yep.
the soldier will come and set the dog free, while the dog is there, they will blow the IED up, and the soldiers and the dog will die. And when we got to the log, I had to come with my D9 to make sure there weren't explosives around. And then we also brought a canine dog to sniff out explosive material. And I'm also an EOD specialist. I trained with explosives beforehand.
Mhm.
So I can see the detonator wrapped in tinfoil, and the cords and the cables that were intended for the explosive. They took the explosive off; it wasn't there in the end, but they left the detonator there. You could actually, I have pictures of it. You could actually see how it was all set up. An animal. They're using an animal. You will never hear that on any mainstream Western media. You'll never hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. All right, so let's back up a little bit. What were so you said you got a vacation? Was it like a week long vacation
Yeah,
during your military service? Something that I'm trying to think if I ever got.
yeah,
Like when you said that, I go, oh, okay. It looks like the military has gotten a little soft these days.
yeah,
But all jokes aside, so you essentially had a special long vacation because for anybody who doesn't know, we typically get like the weekends off and whatever. I
right,
don't know how it is with the combat engineers, but in the combat units, I know that we will at best get what we call like a chamshush or something, like you
lucky,
know if you're lucky. And so here you have this really long off time as an enlisted soldier. You're not a reservist,
right,
and you're basically enjoying the festival of Sukkot and the final days of it, and like give people an idea of basically how October 7th uh, uh, where it found you, right? Just like in on 9/11, everybody can say
right.
they remember where they were. So
Yeah,
for us,
I was
this is
a high chair
this
in 9/11.
right, yeah, right,
Right.
right. I was actually in Florida in college, but in any case, so 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 how where does it find you? Like what are you doing during your off time?
So, I was 6 months away from finishing my service, and,
Hmm.
when you get to your last 6 months, you're counting down the days. Like, at
Oh
that
yeah,
time, you're counting them down. Even the seconds you're counting. And
yeah.
and I finally got my first break in Israel. After 2 years and 2 months, I finally had my first break,
Hmm.
and on break, I could go and travel, I could go on a hike. I decided to just do nothing. I didn't want to take orders. I didn't want to hear anything. I just wanted quiet. Wake
Hmm.
up when I wanted to, do what I wanted when I wanted to.
Yeah.
The week went by, um, and it was a holiday, and then came the holiday of Simchat Torah, the holiday where we celebrate the Torah.
Hmm.
My friends and I from my pre-military school, we met together and we were partying all night. We were drinking, and you're a combat soldier, you get off for the weekend or for a break, and it's a holiday. You know, there's gonna be some schnapps, as they say,
Hmm.
and we drink a lot. And I tell people that 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, October 7th, wow, incredible! It was an incredible time. Like the first hours of October 7th, because we were just partying and dancing and super drunk.
Yep. Yep.
2, 3 o'clock in the morning, we decided to call it a night, and we make it back to our apartments. And I set an alarm for 7 o'clock in the morning, to wake up and go pray at synagogue. The alarm goes off, but I was still either really drunk or really hungover, so I went back to sleep. And then at 8 o'clock in the morning, sharp, my phone goes off. I didn't set another alarm, so I understood it was probably a phone call. And if a combat soldier always has to be on standby just in case something happens, even on a holiday and on Shabbat. Now, I'm religious, and on Shabbat, you're not allowed to use any electronics.
Hmm.
So if I get a phone call from the military, I have to answer it just in case it's something. My officer, he calls me, and he would never call me on Shabbat. I answer the phone, and he tells me that a couple of terrorists infiltrated the border, and they're firing rockets. Now, I've taken a border patrol before up in Lebanon, up in Judea and Samaria. Never in Gaza though. But I said a few terrorists infiltrated. The IDF is there. They have their battalions. They probably have it under control.
Hmm.
I'll be on standby just in case. I get up, I go brush my teeth, get ready to go to synagogue. And I live by the central bus station in Jerusalem, which, if anyone knows, that's literally the most central part of Israel. And at 8:10, an air raid went off.
Hmm.
And right there, I understood, if my officer called me and there's an area in the central bus station right now on a holiday, something really serious just went down. So I go to my porch and I see rockets are firing over my head. I run to my roommate. I tell him to wake up. We got to go to the bomb shelter. And he goes back to sleep because he didn't think anything of it. a few hours passed by, a few hours, an hour, a couple of minutes, really. We started to understand that SHTF, something really, really bad just happened. And we were all being called up back to base. Now, if combat engineering is called up to base, you understand something really, really bad happened, especially if the D9 guys are being called back.
Hmm.
And and
Where were you guys stationed prior to October 7th?
so we were stationed in the Golan Heights. We were in
Hmm.
training. We were 2 months into training already, and we had to go up north on October 7th to gather all of our equipment, our APCs, our D9s, our explosives, our weapons, all of our logistics. So on October 7th, I got a phone call from my logistics officer that command over a bus for the Jerusalem district, and we gathered all the people and sped up north. Within 48 hours, we found ourselves with all of our armored vehicles, with all of our equipment on the border in Gaza, on the border of Gaza, I should say,
Right.
waiting to invade. Now, it took 20 days before we entered Gaza because we had to make sure that there weren't any more terrorists in Israel. And
Right.
we had to gain an understanding of who's missing, who's alive, who's not alive, who's a hostage, who's where.
Yeah.
And that took time. We really Hamas did a really good move on us.
Hmm.
And for those few weeks we really were in in a bad state. And after 20 days, we finally invaded in Gaza.
Hmm. And I remember in the beginning that there was so much chaos. We did not have the full death toll. And I remember every day the death toll would just climb just a little bit, a little
Yeah,
bit, a little bit. It was like, it was as if people did know, those in charge did know the bigger number, they were purposely slowly releasing it in small bite sizes, so to speak,
right.
to kind of minimize the shock of how many people got murdered on October 7th. And then also, I noticed that they originally said it was 3,000 terrorists that crossed in, and now we know it's over 6,000 terrorists
Yeah,
that crossed in, with just over 3,000 of those being actual Nukhba and whatever Hamas terrorists, and then the rest were essentially the angry mob that wanted to join in with the terrorists and carry out these attacks. So essentially, we had about half of that, or over half. They were trained, they had a mission, they knew what they were doing. The others just kind of, uh, uh, you know, joined in with the frenzy.
right.
So it was absolute chaos, like you're saying, exactly. And I remember that it was total chaos. And I know my guys were very annoyed with, what's up with the ground operations? Why aren't we moving in? What are we waiting for? And we're clearing communities from these terrorists,
Right.
open fields where these terrorists were hiding out in. I think that the one guy I heard of was like about, was at least a month later, was found in an open field somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, crazy stuff like that. Absolute chaos.
Now, people asked me if I was shocked that October 7th happened, and I told them the truth that it didn't shock me at all. I was
Hmm.
already 2 years and 2 months into my service, and in combat, I took guard duty in almost every border, and I saw how unprofessional everything was. And everyone was saying, "Oh, how is it that our soldiers don't have the proper equipment?" And and I remember I used to come. American soldiers, like Americans who come to Israel to join the IDF, we love the tactical firearms world, and
Hmm.
we come with our old equipment. And I remember I'd come with a proper plate carrier and proper equipment, and my upper chain of command would tell me, "You can't wear that. It's not allowed. You have to wear what we give you." And I
Right.
and I'd say
Standard,
like,
standard, as they say, standard military issue.
right. And I tell them like, "This is the cream of the crop of equipment." And it was such a closed-minded mindset amongst the chain of command that I understood how vulnerable we are. And I also understood that manpower did not exist amongst the combat battalions that took uh, that took guard duty on our most important borders. And I wasn't shocked when we heard Golani was completely outnumbered and they were completely ambushed and their military outposts were completely taken over. It wasn't a shock to me because when I was on the Lebanon border in December 2022, we had the same exact thing. And I would tell my officers, listen, we don't have manpower here. You know, we're taking two guys on a patrol in an unarmored vehicle on the Lebanon border, and we see Radwan terrorists. Radwan is Hezbollah commandos every
Right.
day, and the rules of engagement put every soldier in handcuffs that we weren't allowed to do anything.
Hmm.
So it was just a matter of time, and we weren't allowed to fight. It's almost as if we had to give hugs and kisses to our enemy who's only dreaming of the day they can shed blood. And
Hmm.
I came from abroad to join and to fight the enemy. And for those 2 years and 2 months, it didn't happen. My whole service up until the war, I tell people I was in 2 different armies. I was in the army prior to October 7th, I was in the army after October 7th. Or I was in the army of October 7th and the army after October 7th, which is 3 different armies. The army before October 7th was unprofessional. It was ran and still is by corrupt individuals who are so close-minded that when their small itty-bitty soldier who doesn't have a rank comes and says something extremely logical and very important, it looked away. And then October 7th happened, and we were an army that was on the brink of death. And we were very lucky because we had the police on that day who they pretty much, along with Israeli civilians, they saved the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then after
They really held the line for sure.
yeah, and then after October 7th, all these generals understood, okay, we need real equipment. We need NIJ certified ballistic armor. We need proper firearms. In my entire time in Gaza, I had two M4s. None of them ever worked. I knew that I had two grenades and a knife. That's what I was fighting with because our equipment was outdated. It was so everything was so corrupted.
Hmm.
And Hamas was our enemies are very smart. Never underestimate the powers of your enemies. And
Yeah.
Hamas was so smart. They planned everything. And they knew that
Hmm.
our leadership within the army and outside the army was so corrupted and so rotten that they would use it for their advantage. And that's exactly what happened on October 7th. People don't know that. There was supposed to be an entire extra battalion on October 7th guarding the Gazan border, and they took them out and sent them to Judea and Samaria. And the Gazans knew about this. So they saw it was the perfect time to attack. And we were very lucky that they didn't coordinate with their brothers up north, Hezbollah. We probably
Hmm.
would have lost the entire country. And if you ask me, as someone who's been to these borders all around, we
Yeah.
probably would have seen an actual Holocaust
Yeah.
in October 7th of 2023 if Hezbollah would have joined and taken part in that invasion.
Yeah. I mean, that is definitely the miracle of October 7th. We had a few miracles, right? We had the Nova Festival that was not something that they knew about. And as hard as it is to say, and I've said this a few times, but the terrorists, instead of sticking to their objective,
Right.
they got sidetracked by the blood frenzy of
Correct.
all of these targets of opportunity at
Right.
this festival that they did not know about, because this, it wasn't a public, well-known event for many people, and even for those who did know about it, I understood they changed the location or the time or whatever
Right.
last minute. So as an insider, the who's who that knew about this cool
Right.
guy, cool girl party thing that were there. And so that was one little piece of their puzzle that was not planned.
Right.
I know that they had plans to go to Jerusalem, the Al-Aqsa flood.
Yeah,
Had they
they were gonna
reached
go to
Jerusalem,
I know
yeah,
they
had
wanted to go to the Kiryat in Tel Aviv, and they wanted to free, their the prisoners in the prisons, the terrorists are
yep,
in the prisons, and they would
exactly,
have succeeded. I mean, within 20, 30 minutes on a weekend holiday in the
yeah,
morning, no one's on the road. Full speed, you're
exactly.
there in 20, 30 minutes.
Exactly. So I just think about like what you were saying there, and I think a lot of people don't understand the miracles that we had on that day.
Yeah,
Yes, it
100%.
was a horrible, horrible attack. Yes, we got hit very hard, but
We
there's
got
so many
lucky.
miracles. There are so many
Yeah,
miracles. They didn't make it to Jerusalem and then also cause the uprising of tens of thousands of Muslim extremists living in Judea, Samaria that would have wanted to join forces with them.
right.
Um, and then, like you said, up in the north, you have the Radwan units. They were prepared. They were well. They not. They were. They are prepared. They are well trained uh, um, combatants. That had they crossed the border and carried an attack simultaneously, it would have been utter devastation. And it was actually Sinwal's pride that caused him to make because they were synchronized. They were planning a joint op, but it was his pride that we are going to take the honor for this great attack against Israel and screw those guys kind of attitude, and that's why he did the attack without them being coordinated.
Which is also we're
And
pretty lucky that the Sunni, the Shiites, and all these tribal Arab mentalities, they don't work together. They don't work well. So
correct,
that's something that definitely saved us as well.
yeah. So 100%, 100%. I've operated both in Gaza and in Lebanon, in Lebanon, and and spoken with the communities, people living right on the border there in the north, and just seeing the vulnerabilities, like you pointed
Right.
out, it would have been devastating
Right.
had that been carried out. Wow.
Yeah.
So so um, so essentially you're so then now you're part of you're in the staging grounds with the rest of the military. Like you said, it took about 20 days till we finally got the green light with the ground operations. What was the first thing that you were involved with once you got the green light?
So a week before the invasion, or about 2 weeks before the invasion, we were debriefed what our mission was going to be. Uh, we knew that we were going to be dispatched to different battalions, different teams, different companies, and people don't understand this, but the D9 world is very, very small. It's not like there's so many infantrymen. There's tens of hundreds of thousands of infantrymen. There's only very small amount of D9 operators, whether it's commanders or an actual D9 operator himself. So that leaves us with very few tools for a lot of people.
Yeah,
So we knew that because we were in our mandatory service, that we are going to be the most operational. The reservists,
right.
they'll come, but they come and go. But the mandatory service, we don't leave. We stay until we're done with our mandatory service.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so we also knew that in my company. So before I get into that, I was under the 162nd Division, which
Hmm.
is the division that's been fighting in the Gaza theater. And under that, I was under the 401st Brigade, which is the brigade that has been fighting in Gaza. That's a tank brigade. And under that brigade, I was in the 601st Combat Engineering Battalion, which is the most operational combat engineering battalion in this entire war. And this battalion has probably destroyed the majority of the infrastructure in Gaza, whether it's northern Gaza or in central Gaza or in southern Gaza. And we also knew this because our division, the entire division, is under the Southern Command, which means that Gaza is going to be our playground.
Hmm.
And us, as pretty much the only D9 company in the entire division, one company for the most part, yeah, maybe two, three other companies, one reservist, another that was commander's course D9, but those guys again, they come and go. We're the only
Yeah.
company that is truly there.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew that we were going to have the most important missions. And in my company, my team was the best D9 team in the company because we were the most weathered and well seasoned operatives in the team in the company. So we knew that also meant we're probably getting the heaviest mission. So we were dispatched to uh, the 52nd Battalion under their 7th Company, which is a reservist company, and the 52nd Battalion. I know these numbers are a little confusing, but the 52nd Battalion, till this day, has the most confirmed terrorists killed in Gaza. Is the first battalion to cross the border, and we were dispatched to 7th Company. 7th Company, the company commander, is a reservist company, and the commander of the brigade, he asked the battalion commander to find a company commander in reserves to make an all-star tank company, to take the best tank operators and the best team and give them the most important missions. And that's exactly what he did. And they got really seasoned tank operators who have been in almost every Gaza mission and every Lebanon mission in the last 10, 20 years. And they needed D9 operators. So they needed the best D9s that were available, and that was my team. So we come to the debriefing of what our mission is going to be. And the company commander, he tells us our mission is the most important mission currently in the entire IDF. We're the first ones to enter Gaza. We're the first ones to open the gates of hell. And we're the first ones in over 20 years to enter terrain where the enemy is just waiting to kill us.
Mm.
So we're four D9s, which means it's 4 commanders and 4 operators. And we look at all the commanders, we look at each other, and we understood it was a suicide mission for us because combat engineering is always first. So it means we're going to lead the way. So we were split into 2 teams, the main force and the attacking force. Main force goes first, attacking force will be behind, and they'll be as cover fire for the main force. So I was dispatched to the main force, which meant that I was going to be the first one to enter, along with my D9 partner. And we were the very first 2 D9s to enter Gaza, which meant we were the first people to go in. And a week before the invasion, we prepared the grounds. We went into Gaza for 3 kilometers. And we had to prepare the grounds for all the 162nd Division prior to invasion. We were again, I was my partner D9 and I, we were the first ones in, and we saw a Hello Kitty bag. And
Oh
get
yeah.
up on the radio, and I asked the commander, like, there's a Hello Kitty bag here. Should we shoot it? Should we do something? He says, no, it's nothing. One of the tankers, he's like, I'm gonna shoot it, and shoots it, and it blew up. Because
Yep.
on October 7th, they entered Gaza and they would hide children bags with explosives
Yep.
because they know that we're gonna come and pick it up because it looks innocent.
Exactly. And we
And
think it might belong to one of the hostages and one of the
correct,
kids that they took and all. Yeah.
correct.
I remember that. Yep.
A- and and right next to it was also like one of those small little motorcycles. What do they call it?
Moped.
Moped, right?
Yeah.
And right next to that was RPGs and RPG warheads that were just thrown out, that came out of a sack. You can see outside the sack that it's there right next to the border by Zikim.
Mm-hmm.
And the invasion that we
So,
did,
so this is northern Gaza we're talking about.
northwestern Gaza, right over there,
Mm-hmm.
between a kibbutz called Zikim and a kibbutz called Netiva Sarah, right by the Erez crossing. And
Mm-hmm.
right there is where we prepared the invasion. And also, we weren't even sure if we were really going to invade, because there was a question mark, like, is this really going to happen? Because every single time that there was a reason to invade Gaza, the IDF never had the guts to do it. So we were
Yeah.
still in question mark if we were going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Then came Friday, October 27th, where we understood the day's coming and we're going to invade. And we get into our vehicles, we make our phone calls to our families, and we tell them. I remember I called up my parents And I told them, guys, they're taking our phones away. I'm not going to be able to talk. I don't know for how long. Um, but yeah, I'm not going to get too much into that. But that was not an easy phone call. And my
Mm-hmm.
father, he blesses me before I go in. And my father was Tier 1 Special Forces, and he knows, he knows what war is. He knows what being in an operational theater is. And I
Yeah.
could hear his voice, cracking and crying as he's blessing me. And I'm crying on the phone, but like inside. And I have soldiers, like they can't see me cry, I'm about to go invade. So I'm done. We hang up the phone, and I swallow all the tears, and I put on the warrior mode. I put on the warrior mask, the warrior face, and it's money time. We're going in. And I get in vehicle, and start and we start the invasion. Friday night, October 27th, 2023. My partner United and I, along with 7th Company and the 52nd Battalion, we entered Gaza, and we opened the gates of hell. Yep. Was it
Crazy.
definitely crazy. We entered when we entered Gaza, what you see today,
Mm.
it's Gaza's in crumbs. When we entered Gaza, it was a fully built city. And I remember before we made it to the actual city, I'm looking with my binoculars, and I'm just saying, what's gonna come when we make it to there? And then 3-4 days into the invasion, I volunteered to go to the Tabar Battalion. The Tabar Battalion is an infantry battalion under Givati, and they needed a D9, so I went and volunteered. And I witnessed the worst tragedy that I witnessed in Gaza was here. We were looking for a tunnel at night. We had intel that there was a tunnel, and we're operating with night vision. When you go to battle, you're only with night vision. So like, think about, you're with an armored bulldozer looking for a tunnel with night vision. I mean, it's just like, I think it's like the coolest thing ever, right? Like, it's super badass. And we couldn't find the tunnel, and we're already a month into the war and 4 days into the ground invasion. So we're destroyed. We're tired. We're just not. We're not. We're just functioning like robots. We couldn't find the tunnel, and then sunrise came. And at sunset was the toughest battles, which we only discovered at the beginning. We didn't understand how Hamas fights. We didn't understand their tactics. It took a few days, a few weeks till we fully grasped how they fought. And at sunrise, we heard on the radio that there was a terrorist with an RPG, and he fired it at a Namir APC, and the whole APC blew up. And we heard on the radio 9 killed and 2 wounded. One of the guys who was wounded succumbed from his wounds, and only 1 man survived. This was called the Namir tragedy. And right to the left of me, I just see this armored APC with, that's not even it's a coffin with 10 soldiers who are, may their souls rest in peace. But it was right there was when it really hit me that I'm in war. Up until
Mm-hmm.
then, like October 7th, and you knew your war, but that's when it smacked me in the face, and I knew people were dying. And it's the 4th day to the invasion.
Mm-hmm.
10 guys were just killed next to me. What is to come of the next few days, weeks, months, however long it's going to be, and it's something that really, really stuck with me until this day, really.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, that's the one where they had the hatch open a little bit or something like that, and that's how the RPG was able to come in.
So there were so many conspiracy theories that came out.
Right.
Um, what happened was, I actually spoke. I'm in rehabilitation. One of the men I'm in rehabilitation, he replaced those men, and they were armored APC after the APC was rebuilt. And he
Mm-hmm.
told me that the RPG actually entered and penetrated, and it hit one of the, how do you say, the Lao
Yep. Yep.
missile. and
Yeah.
it actually
Yeah.
it
It's a
detonated.
rocket propelled grenade. Yeah.
Right, and it detonated it inside the vehicle, and after this, they came with a rule that we can't have any explosives inside the APCs because
Hmm.
of this, and it was really just a freak thing. I mean, it wasn't like they have these crazy RPGs that are that are nuclear,
Right.
but
So, but it still penetrated the vehicle in
yeah,
that
it
case.
penetrated,
Yeah.
and and he came out of the tunnel that we were looking for, and where was the tunnel? In a residential area. Now, before we entered Gaza, we were debriefed about the poverty that existed in Gaza.
Oh
They
yeah.
didn't debrief us about the rich lifestyle that exists in Gaza. And when
Yep.
we made it, I'm telling you, I went and destroyed villas, mansions on the beaches, and I put houses that were far nicer than houses I've been to in Israel and even in the United States.
Yep.
Houses that were just 5-star built homes.
Hmm.
And in this area, in this residential rich area, was where you came out of a tunnel. I mean, if you're a civilian and you live in this area, you're gonna tell me that you didn't know there was a tunnel? It almost reminds me
Yeah.
of back in World War II, the villages that were outside the concentration camps. And in this famous TV series Band of Brothers, they go to the concentration camp and they ask the villagers, "You didn't smell bodies? You didn't know there was a concentration camp?" And they all said, "We had no clue, we had no clue." But
Everybody plays dumb. Yeah. Yeah.
everybody knew. Everybody was there.
Yeah.
Whether you were a bystander or not, you still knew. And if you're a bystander to evil, that makes you no more, no less evil than they are.
100%. Yeah. I mean, that to me was also a shocker because we would use those homes as forward operating bases, right?
Right.
And I mean, when we got to the structures, they weren't in great condition, of course. I mean, they were all blown out either from an airstrike or a
You're welcome.
tank
You're welcome.
yeah, or probably a D9.
Yeah.
And and so you have to patch it up and make it work, right? There's
Right.
rubble everywhere. It's a mess. It's disgusting, whatever. But like you just said, though, I noticed the square footage of the house was massive. The finishings were high end.
Yeah.
Everything from the marble to the fake drop ceilings and everything that were just everything was so
I
high
had
end.
I
And
had another
you
lone
know,
soldier from the States.
where's the poverty, right?
Right.
That we keep
Right.
being told about. So what you just said is what I remember all these young soldiers that were with us
Yeah.
because we started the war with the paratroopers, and these young soldiers were like, "What the heck, man?" Like, where's the poverty? Because these guys are like leftists. They're typically on the streets, protesting, free the Gazans from the open
Right,
air
right,
prison, and so to hear these guys,
right,
like with like the scales falling off, so to speak, right? Of like, you got to be kidding me, like
right.
just the level of frustration for these guys to have that realization you've been duped and lied to.
I
I
mean,
can
even the
confirm that.
tiles they were using. I had a guy
Yeah,
with me who used to work for a tile company in the States, and he knew the prices of tiles.
yeah,
And he
I'm
comes
sure
up
he
to me and
did.
tells me like, "Prime, each tile here costs $15," and which is crazy. I mean,
Oh yeah,
they
that's
genuinely
insane.
had incredible homes. I mean, not to say there wasn't poverty. There obviously was poverty,
Yeah,
but the magnitude that of 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 luxury that existed in Gaza, nobody knew about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then the other thing is that they say it's the most congested place in the world,
Which is a complete
right?
lie.
Another complete lie, right? I mean,
So that was part of Hamas's strategy of fighting.
yeah,
They could have expanded in Gaza, but how it looked Gaza was northern Gaza was this dense area with Jabalia, Rimal, Sajaiya, and then center of Gaza was clear open land
Yep.
And then southern Gaza was Khan Yunis and Rafah and Tel Sultan. But you had all around perimeters was open land. Now, there was reason for that.
Hmm.
The Gazans, they would use the open land for their rocket launching sites.
Right. The underground, in the foliage. Yep.
Right. And also they wouldn't expand because if they expand, they lose that tactic in the media of most densely populated place in the world, which isn't true. They just choose to live in a densely populated lifestyle. Why? Because Hamas doesn't allow them to leave. They have to
Yeah.
stay so we can use them as civilian shields. They're shields
Yeah.
for the but also the Gazans, they want to be shields because they're so deeply brainwashed
Hmm.
into believing in a jihadist mentality and a jihadist
Right.
ideology that if the Israelis come and I die as a civilian, I'm a martyr and I will make it to the farthest places in the next world.
Right. Right.
And that's a
So it's in,
5-year-old saying that. That's a 5-year-old saying that.
yeah. So they incentivize the civilians to become human shields, and that there's no greater honor than dying for the cause.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I once made it on we made it to a house, a 5-story house where this man built it for his entire family. Incredible villa styled home. And he was well respected amongst Hamas. I went through his stuff, through his libraries to see what kind of person lives in such a luxurious house.
Hmm.
And he had Hamas certificate of appreciation. I took all the stuff. He had a Hamas certificate of appreciation. He had Hamas patches. He had a ticket to a Hamas gala event back in 2017. Yeah,
Hamas gala event.
yeah.
Do
And I
they have any
found
purple haired people that come there too?
right. No, they didn't have
The
any of that.
gays for Palestine?
Right. No, there were no gay bars in Gaza.
No? Okay.
They only had Allahu Akbars in Gaza. Right.
Exactly.
And and I was going through one of the books, and I found a book. I so badly wanted to find things that showed the truth about what really was Gaza, and I found a
Right.
book that showed everything. I found a Hamas summer camp book, pamphlet book from 2013, before the last Gaza war. It was a
Mhm.
Hamas summer camp where there's pictures of them, these kids, these 10, 11-year-old kids, learning to shoot AK-47s in formation. Not like you go into the gun range, you're doing skeet shooting. Learning in formation to shoot.
Yeah.
We're going to extremist imam uh, classes to learn about being a shaheed and jihad. And when I was going through the pages, I was so happy to see it. Not happy because I'm not happy that children are learning to become genocidal, but happy because here it is. I have the proof for the world to know that this actually did happen. And I
Mhm.
continued going through his books, and I found all his other extreme jihadist ideologies, and that's really what it was. Those kids in that magazine pamphlet were my age on October 7th. They were the ones who invaded, who crossed and slaughtered, because that's what they were brought up in.
Right.
I didn't
They're
go
brainwashed.
I didn't go to a summer camp where we were shooting in formation to kill Gazans. It doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. In fact, something that I know is shocking to most Americans when I travel in the States and try to explain the gun culture to them, because they're like, you guys are, you're the best in the world. And I'm like, no, we're not. No, we're not.
Right.
You guys are the best in the world when it comes to understanding guns and the different types of weapons and
Correct.
gun culture. That's America.
Right. Too
Israel
right.
does not. Israel does yeah. Israel does not have a gun culture.
Right.
The first time I touched a weapon and fired it was when I got recruited as a soldier in a combat unit.
So
That's
I
the
used to
first
shoot as a
time.
kid. So, when I came to Israel, as I said before, the unprofessionalism that exists here.
Yeah.
And when you come as someone who goes shooting at ranges in the States and who's a proud member of the 2A community,
Yeah.
and you come here and you see you're using weapons from the Vietnam War. Where is, I got my pistol right here with me right here. I only get 100 rounds. Why
Yeah.
only 100 rounds? You know, why can't I have unlimited?
Yep.
The
Yep.
terrorist lives I'm right here in Gush Etzion right now. There is
Mhm.
an Arab village called Takwa about 5 kilometers less, about 2 kilometers away from me. They
Mhm.
are fully armed and ready for when the day comes with unlimited ammunition to kill as many Jews. I get
Yep.
100 rounds. Why do
Yep.
I get only 100 rounds? You know, I mean, that's the mentality that's here. You would
Yeah.
think after October 7th, okay, the civilians, they saved the day. Let's arm them. Let's give them incredible equipment, like access, not to just get them, but let's get them access to better firearms, more firearms, because local militias are the ones that are protecting the the ones that are protecting Israel at the front line. But we don't have a Second Amendment here. We have
Yeah.
very strict rules. And those strict rules sadly led to many people to die on October 7th.
Yeah. It's very unfortunate, and it's, we're still kind of catching up to where we were, right? I mean, I think another thing that people don't understand is on October 7th, our first responders who are the ones who are armed by the military to defend the communities, right? Um, so essentially, it's like a guerrilla teams, if you like, whatever. There's no real term for it in the states, but it's similar to like a sheriff's department
Right,
formation,
right.
right? Where you get weapons from the government, you have a mission, right, from the
A
government.
well-regulated militia, as it says in the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia.
There you go. Well regulated militia, however you want to word it, right? But essentially, these are civilians who are volunteer responders, first responders to an invasion of any kind to these Jewish communities. Their ARs were taken from them,
Right,
which the Ministry of Defense issued them.
right.
They not taken away, yeah, but they were put into the safes in the community in a central location. And the concept was that only if you come under attack, someone's going to run over there with a key. They're going to open the safe
Right.
and they're going to hand out the weapons. And you're going to have to also load bullets into the magazines because the magazines were separated from the rifles and the magazines were emptied. Okay. This is what I know was the fate of many of these guys, a lot of them good friends of mine. Okay.
Yep.
I've developed relationships with these guys for many years, trying to help raise awareness for them, help raise funds for them to get gear. One of them I just met the other day where I was producing the filming shoot for a nonprofit that actually donated to this guy who's the head of the Eshkol security community, right? The Eshkol Council. So he's the head of like 32 communities under him. And had he not received the donations for the armed vehicle, for example, he came under two ambushes on October 7th while he was trying to go meet his military counterpart to discuss defensive measures for the communities. And if he had not had that armored vehicle, he would have been dead today because he came under two ambushes. And that's the reality, right? It's like we have to run to a central location where everything is like taken apart, and men literally died running to go get the weapons. Because guess what? The terrorists knew that. The
And that's
terrorists
the
knew
sad
it.
tr it's the sad truth in this country is that the leadership in Israel doesn't learn from its mistakes,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
if you live as a Jew, you're a minority in the Middle East. Jews,
Yeah.
Druze, Christian minorities here.
Yeah.
We're outnumbered by Islamic jihadists who surround us. We need to be able to arm ourselves for when the day comes. And the
Yeah.
day came, and people we warned our politicians, but they're so corrupt, and the elitists amongst Israel handcuffed the Israeli civilian from protecting his family, her family, his community, and we got hit hard.
Yeah.
We paid a big
And that
price.
and that's very unfortunate. And just like you were pointing out too, that's another thing that I saw as a big failure was military leadership that you're so pacified in taking action, and or taking initiative, right? Because the soldiers did take action. They showed up, they were there, but then they were waiting for orders to come down and trickle down from the high command of what to do. It's like, we're here, we're ready, we're armed, we're prepared to go fight these terrorists, but let's just all wait till somebody gives the green light. What we really needed on that day is somebody like Ariel Sharon, who's told, don't go and invade Egypt, don't cross the border, right? And then he goes, they said yes, you know, and he plays dumb, like the radio, isn't working, right?
Right.
And had he not made that move in the 6 Day War, then we would not have been in the advantage that we were because
Right.
of his initiative, right? And so that's the sad reality. I think
Yeah.
that you're kind of putting an emphasis here that is a sore spot, obviously, for you as well
Yeah.
as a
Uh,
young soldier.
yeah.
I mean, I have over 20 years of
Right.
experiencing this and
Right.
watching the decline of the military, if you like, in taking initiative, in making the decision. The commander who's in the field, who's seeing the threat and been trained to respond to that threat. But no, let's wait for a green light, because we don't want to be another Elora Zaria. We
Right.
don't want to be a this or a that, right? We
We
don't want to
have
be labeled as that soldier who pulled the trigger. Yeah. Um,
right. We have such a strong military. We really do.
yeah, we do.
And 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 why didn't we use it beforehand? When I was in Gaza, again, I was with 551 Commando Reserves. We went to no, we were in northeastern Gaza. We were about a kilometer, a little more, away from Nir Oz. Nir Oz is a kibbutz
Yep.
that sadly lost a lot of people. And we went to an Islamic jihadist, the Islamic Jihad, the terrorist organization. They had a military training base in Gaza right on the border. And they needed D9s to get there and open the path to make sure there weren't any explosives. So I make it, I'm opening the path, and I make it to this to this training base. In this training base, it was a CQB training base, and I made it to the CQB part of the base, open field. Everything's outside in the open,
Hmm.
and I don't know how you say it in English, but mecholot. You had not these crates,
Containers,
like
containers.
containers, and the
Yep. Shipping
containers.
containers.
Each shipping container was a different. Was supposed to model something else. One of the
Hmm.
shipping containers modeled a school. It had chairs in it, and they were training to raid into a school and kill everyone or take hostage. Why? Because they were trained to take over a school to take it hostage. And then I continued to the shooting range. Anyone who's been to a shooting range knows you have the targets at the end, and behind the targets you have a
A
wall.
berm. You have a
Right,
berm.
made
Yep.
out of sand.
Yep.
This was a very different one. At past the targets, you had the sand, whatever you called it, and the middle was cut off to go to the other part of the range. So you go and you shoot the targets, run forward, go to the next part of the range. And what was the next part of the range? It was a military outpost, an IDF military outpost. They copied and pasted each and every single part of this military outpost, and it was it was the same exact thing in Israel. They wrote
Mm.
in Hebrew everything, and they knew exactly what it looked like.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, this is 1 kilometer away from Nir Oz,
Hmm.
open field. All Israel had to do was put up a drone, send it over, and they'd see their training to mass murder Jews. And I think about when I came here, when I came to this range, I said, how on earth has the leadership been so poor, that even this, a kilometer away, they couldn't even pick it up?
I don't
all the
think they didn't.
time.
I don't think they didn't pick it up. I think they for sure knew about this. That's the sad reality. Is the intel knew every square inch of what was going on in Gaza, to my understanding, right? Satellite footage, etc. I highly doubt that this shooting range, this training facilities that you just mentioned were, uh, did not, it passed by the leadership, right? For sure, the intelligence community knew about this. I know a lot of the terrorists even filmed themselves, and that footage got leaked and got, apprehended by the intelligence community, right? So, I mean, they obviously knew that there was this level of training taking place. And then I also point out as well that through the Philadelphia corridor, the terrorists went out and went all the way up into Afghanistan after the U.S. pullout and
Right.
got the best training there is
Best
by
weapons, best training.
best weapons and everything. Yeah, by
Yep.
Al Qaeda
Right.
up in Afghanistan. So these guys definitely had training from all kinds of areas,
Yeah.
right?
And they were
Um,
incredible. They were
yeah,
really incredible fighters. I mean, they were their CQB tactics, their guerrilla warfare tactics. They were smart, and look, they dragged on a war till now.
yeah, and
That's that
ongoing, and
that's
ongoing.
that's crazy,
Yeah.
and that's solely on our part of our poor. Listen, war cannot be fought in a Western manner. If you fight
Hmm.
war in Western manner, you will never win.
Yeah.
Japan, imperialist Japan in World War II collapsed for one reason. We did something that was extremely non-Western. We dropped two nuclear bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that ended it. Nazi Germany collapsed because we went into Berlin and we destroyed everything. No mercy. The Soviets and the Americans. You can't go into war like America did in Afghanistan, Iraq, and use diplomacy and lawyers. That's not how war is fought. Evil does not care about laws.
Yeah.
They will use that to their benefit, which is exactly what Hamas did and does.
Yeah, there's a really powerful quote that I heard from special warfare individual, Green Beret named Tim Kennedy. He made this statement on this very issue, and he said that I think he was talking about America, but the same goes for Israel. What he said was is that we have lost the will to do what it takes to win in war, right? And just like you pointed out with World War II, America had an objective to do whatever it takes to win in the Second World War against the Nazis, against the Japanese, against everyone who posed a threat to the United States and to Europe. Today, and I would say post the Second World War, or really, I'd say it started with Vietnam. Actually, is
Right.
to my
That was the
understanding.
first war that was publicized on TV.
It was, well, it was publicized and it was criticized and
Right.
it was demonized, and the war fighters got got portrayed as these demons who were killing children, indiscriminately, because that's what American war fighters do, right? That's who
Right.
they are. Wrong. These are boys that grew up with either Christian or Jewish, Judeo-Christian values, right?
Right.
They grew up with biblical worldview, which is thou shalt not kill, yeah, or rather thou shalt not commit murder. But in any case, um, and so I'd say after all of these years of all of these, like, the Cold War and the Gulf War and all these different, in and out, going into Iraq, going into Afghanistan, is a war worth fighting? Is it not worth fighting? Right? All this public opinion, yeah, and leadership that essentially gives into the media and to people who are ignorant and don't understand what it takes to win and fight in a war. Let we let their portrayal and their perspective, their ignorant one at that, be the one that shapes the way we fight these wars. And I agree with you on that. We have lost the will to do what it takes to win in war. And I'm waiting for Israel to regain that perspective,
Correct.
because I know that we know how to fight a war, and we also know how to end a war if we really want to. It's a
Correct.
matter of the will to do it, and
Yeah.
not give
This
a flip about what the world says and the naysayers say,
all
because
of my friends and I,
they're not in this.
right,
They're not in this.
all of my friends and I that were the peak of this war, the peak combat of this war was up until January, February 2024. And all of my friends and I, we agreed that this war should have ended and been won already by then.
Yeah,
And now the war, it's being fought with lawyers. How can we fight? How can we not fight? How much rice should we give the Gazans, aka Hamas? How much
yeah,
fuel should we give them? And at
yeah,
the same time, you're realizing that I'm going in every day, risking my life every day for a war that's only being continued when it can so easily end. We don't want a war. We don't want another year, 2 years like Ukraine, Russia. We want to
yeah.
end it fast. We want to
Mhm.
win. And win requires violence. And violence is what wins war, not hugs and kisses. And I really wish the leadership would see that. And when my position in the army, you see everything on the battlefield, and you're the front line of everything. You see the
Yeah.
tunnels, you see the magnitude of the tunnels, you see the hospitals, the schools, which are all terrorist facilities. And then you come home, you see the news, you see the politicians, and it puts you in such a low state of mind. It
Hmm.
destroys morale because we so
Yeah.
badly want to win. Let us win.
Hmm. And more than that, you've actually been injured in combat.
Yeah, yeah,
So and with that said, and if you're able to
yeah.
share with us about that. But with that said, even being injured and knowing the horrors of and the suck, right, of
Yeah.
that toll that it takes on us as warriors,
Yeah.
would you be willing to go back and to finish this war?
I hope to be able to heal and come back. It's to be a warrior is my DNA. I mean,
Well, I'm saying, if you're able to, right now, you're
right,
able to,
right.
hypothetically speaking, you're able to, and you've already sustained being injured.
Right.
With that being said, would you be willing to go back and
There, there,
continue and do what it
there's
takes
two
to
sides.
fight?
There's two
Does that
answers
make
to
sense
that.
what I'm asking?
A
Yeah, yeah.
hundred percent. There's two answers I give. One, if my brothers are fighting, I'm fighting with them. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
The second thing is, let me fight. I don't want to go back to go in cycles on and on. I'm going one time, and that's it. I don't need to go 100 times. There are people, their families here are destroyed because we keep deploying them to areas where their friends keep dying in, and they know they're the next one in line.
Yeah.
Let us go in, let us win. And if that's the mentality, then yes. And a big part of me also says, listen, why do I keep doing this? Why would I keep going back? My leadership's not there for me. And I'm a simple soldier. And I'm at the end of the chain of command. I'm the one who's actually fighting the war.
Yeah.
Let me actually fight it.
Yeah.
I don't want to see my enemy get fed. I want my enemy to die. I
Yeah.
want them to die. But
Yeah.
as I'm fighting them, they're making shawarma. I don't want my enemy to eat a really good shawarma. I want them to die. And if
Yeah.
my leadership gives me that, then yeah, then I'll go back. I will go back anyways because that's just how I'm wired. But when I go back, let me go
Yeah.
back and win.
100%. Now, I think that's important for people to understand. It's not that we are wore out and are not wanting to go back and finish the job. First of all, we are wore out. We are injured, both physically, mentally, emotionally, family, like you pointed out, jobs, etc. But as a reservist, as a family man, I'm and my whole team, I can speak for my whole team, we're all willing to give whatever it takes to put an end to this, but let us fight and let us put an end to this, right? But like you said, to just go back and just like another cycle, another round, I don't think anybody's up for that right now.
Yep.
The cost is too high. The loss that we have seen, it's just too much to process, right?
Yep.
Nobody wants to see another brother just die for
Yep.
nothing, right?
Yep.
Um, so can you explain about what happened and what led to you getting injured? In it was in Gaza, I understand, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we were in central Gaza. We were building the Nazareth corridor. Sorry, the Nazarene corridor.
That's all I'm at.
The Nazarene corridor was a strategy the army used, and it was brilliant. Was to divide northern and southern Gaza. And like I said before, northern Gaza is extremely densely populated, and southern Gaza, and the center is pretty much all open terrain.
Yep.
So we took it, we cut right through, and they took my battalion along with the Nachal Infantry Brigade. To Nachal Infantry Brigade was guarding the area, as my battalion, my engineering battalion, was doing engineering operations. And we were uncovering tunnels, destroying all infrastructure to make almost a desert there. And in this area, we found two massive tunnels. Sorry, one massive tunnel in two different locations. It was the
hmm
largest tunnel found in Gaza. It was 10 kilometers long,
hmm
which is crazy to think, a 10-kilometer long tunnel going from northern to southern Gaza. It was serving as a logistics tunnel.
Yeah.
It took us 2 weeks to dig up in both locations. So that's about a month of excavating. We bought excavators and D9s. The tunnel we found outside of the Turkish hospital and outside the Environmental University of Gaza. Just another
Is that
name.
is that is that the Turkish hospital that we just blew up?
We blew it up. I don't know. I hope we blew it up. I mean, but I'm not sure
Yeah.
if we just blew it up. But
Yeah, we did.
so
Yeah.
so when we went to hospital as engineers, this hospital was almost a bunker. It went 3 stories into the ground, had massive generators, and it wasn't really used for hospital use. It was used for this tunnel that was going through.
hmm
That's why the tunnel was strategically built to pass through a hospital, to pass through the university.
Yeah. Right.
And we were operating here,
So we're
and
talking
my
about that massive university right off of the Netzarim corridor
correct.
towards Rafah area, like to
No,
the
no.
southern.
Towards we're this is southern, this is central Gaza,
Yeah.
but it's north central Gaza, and we're just under south of the Zaytun city, which
Okay.
at the same time we were operating Zaytun in battle.
Yep.
And and I was wounded on March 6, 2024. Um, I later learned that I had more wounds from this wound, but how to work. We had an armored excavator that was destroyed. And another thing that the D9 does is extract vehicles.
hmm
And the majority of extractions, we have a unit called 669, which is our PJs, our paramedic commandos, we'll call them,
Right.
where they go into terrain, they'll take soldiers who are wounded. But people don't talk about the extractions that happen in battle on the spot. And that's us, the D9s. We come up to the vehicles, we extract them when they're wounded, even if they're dead, like in the Namer tragedy, where that APC had to be towed back to Israel.
hmm
So I was extracting an armored excavator that was destroyed for 4 kilometers for an hour back to Israel, and it didn't have brakes. It was completely neutral. So every time we stopped, it hit me in the back, and and I had spinal injury, soft tissue damage. And I was a month
Mm.
in rehabilitation. In
Oh,
that
so the
month,
injury was from the extraction.
that's yes, but it was also from so much more. I
Uh-huh.
then realized that getting hit with RPGs and blowing up every day and losing a lot of friends in the war. I lost over 40 friends. Some I was very close with, some I just had a cup of coffee with in battle.
Hmm.
And I was a month in rehabilitation, and I realized everything started to settle, and I realized I mentally wasn't all right. So I went
Hmm.
to the mental health officer, we call it a kaban,
Yep.
and he sent me to a psychiatrist, and they told me I can't go and fight anymore. I have to go to PTSD, the IDF's PTSD center, which they opened up in the war. I was there for 2 months, and I saw all these specialists, and I saw a neurologist where he told me that I actually my injury is a lot more complex than just PTSD and a spinal injury. He told me I have TBI, which is traumatic brain injury, that I had brain damage, and he told me that's from all the explosions that I was exposed to. I was exposed to thousands of explosions, and it created a lot of brain damage. And all the extractions and the buildings that was taken down was essentially just a car accident every day. So I had severe tissue damage, a spinal injury, and a brain injury. And on top of all that, PTSD. And obviously the good old tinnitus, can never get rid of that. And they decided to discharge me. And I've been in rehabilitation for over a year already.
Hmm.
And really, the tissue damage and all that stuff, as hard as it is, it's livable. But the hardest of all the injuries is by far the PTSD, which I wish for nobody to have to go through that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's, that's something that a lot of people are, I think, probably are not thinking about. When you think about injured soldiers, you want to see somebody with missing a limb, right?
Right.
Or scars of a bullet wound or shrapnel or
Uh-huh.
whatever. And what I think is probably the hardest to both to take care of, to rehabilitate from, is PTS, because for one, it's up to you as the individual to recognize that you have these struggles and that you go and get the medical help and professional help to
Right.
try to recover from that, right? Unless you come forward and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, you're not going to be looked into, you're not going to be checked, and you're not going to have a process, right, to work out of that, because it is fixable. There is a way out, right? And I know one of the guys that, or I don't know him personally, but I know of one of the guys who was, I think it was in the combat engineers, I believe, that had
Yep.
taken his life.
Yeah.
Right? Was that
I'm
combat
familiar with him.
engineer?
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah,
He was a D9 commander,
yeah.
and he went home. He was a father,
A
children. He had
reservist, a
a
reservist,
reservist,
right?
and
Yeah.
he had even some autistic children on the spectrum. So he already
Hmm.
had family issues, but he's coming from the most operational part of the war back home, and you don't just doesn't just shut off. They teach you to be a warrior. They teach you to fight.
Yeah,
They don't teach you how to come back and be a civilian. And
yeah.
that's something that is extremely difficult. You don't just shut off what you saw. You don't just forget about it. It haunts you. I lost my battle buddy, my partner D9, Sufyan Dagash, may his soul rest in peace, a Druzi soldier. He fell right in front of me. We were ambushed. We got stuck in the mud, and we had a whole extraction mission was that became complicated, and I lost him. And it's something that haunts me every single day for my whole life.
Hmm.
And if it did happen, if he was still alive, if didn't get stuck in the mud, and it's not something that you could change, and something that truly haunts you everywhere you go. And the D9s is probably the most operational unit in this war because it's nonstop work. Maybe the infantrymen, they'll rest in their building. The D9 is nonstop, and you're sent to the front line.
Yeah.
You're never going to be the second, third, fourth one to go into battle. You're always the first one, which means you're always going to see the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
And the RPGs that are going to be fired, they're going to you. And the explosives that are going to be blown up, they're going to blow up on you. And the
Yeah.
people are going to die. You're going to be the one to see them because we have windows. We were not
Yep.
tin cans. We see everything,
Yeah.
and it scars you. And it's not a scar, because a scar is healed. It's a
Right.
wound, and it never leaves.
Right.
There's no
Right.
prosthetic for the soul. It's not like a leg. So there isn't really a way to fix it. And
Hmm.
that's what's so difficult about it.
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. It's definitely not easy to be at the forefront. I know with my unit and a lot of the D9s, we did a lot of work um, with and around the D9s. Like you said, they're the first ones in, they're the last ones out. Um, and I know that, we appreciated the fact that, or knowing that you guys cleared the area so that we could push forward, right?
Right.
That we knew that area was somewhat clean from IEDs
Right.
and other threats that would be devastating for the foot soldiers. Um, and it's life saving work. It's hard work, and like you're saying, it's also emotionally um, marring and scarring, right? That is something that you guys are going to have to process through after this war.
Yeah.
God willing, that there is an after with this war, right?
Yeah.
Since it's ongoing. Um, Brother, I really appreciate your sacrifice. I thank you for your service, for being willing to serve in the unit that you chose and to make aliyah to do it. That's not something that I take lightly. Um, I know that us growing up here in Israel, in a way, you don't have a choice. But for you who, you know, grew up abroad, there is no mandatory service for Jews living abroad, right?
Mhm.
And I think that your guys' sacrifice is something that needs to be recognized, and I recognize it and I appreciate it, and I really thank you for your service, man, and thank you for sharing your story with us.
It was an honor. Thank you for having me. I mean, it's always, I say that my friends who fell and I survived. And it's my duty in the blood that was spilled, as hard as it is for me to speak about it, to tell
Hmm.
people the truth about what really was there. Because my friends who fell right in front of my eyes and died in my arms, and they didn't die for these stories to not be shared, and for their stories and for the truth. And there is truth, and please God, there will be justice
Yeah.
to what happened. And in the names of all my friends and all the blood that was spilled, the innocent blood that was spilled, I come and I share my testimony.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate that, and may their memory be a blessing.
Amen.
Guys, thank you so much for listening in to this podcast. If you enjoyed this interview, make sure to like it, to share it. The internet is not going to magically make this interview just get in the laps and in front of the eyes and ears of people around the world. It's up to you, really, to get this message out. This platform is made so that, just as Ephraim mentioned, it is for us to be able to share the stories of those that have fallen, to commemorate them, to memorialize them. That's what this podcast is founded for, and that's why I started this as a response to our war and the many brave souls that really paid the ultimate sacrifice for the freedom of the people of Israel, the security and safety of the people of Israel, the many hours of cold, of hunger, of sleepless nights that we all put in, uh, so that people can have coffee on the streets here in peace and quiet and enjoy their daily routine, if it's walking their dog or dropping their kids off at school. So if you really like this podcast and this particular interview, make sure to share it, because, like I said, people are not going to get this. The truth is not going to get out there. There's so much counter information, so much demonizing of the warriors, the Israelis that have been fighting in this war. And you just got to hear the testimony, the frontline story, literally the front line of the front line story of the first guys in, the first guys to really prepare the way for guys like me and all the rest of the big military to do the ground operations and to eliminate the terrorists. And like you heard here as well, and as I've been saying myself, and he's confirming, these terrorists do not wear uniforms. We're the ones who are wearing uniforms. We're the ones who represent a country and a people. And these guys play dirty, and they play you, the viewer, around the world. They play you. They play on your emotions. And hopefully, you enjoyed this story, this frontline testimony. And like I said, guys, share the story, and it will get in the eyes of all the many other people who are getting all this false narrative and lies from the enemy that we're fighting here. That is also knocking on your door, soon to be. Unfortunately, they're setting their sights on Europe, North America, and other countries around the world. So this isn't just an Israel issue. This is a global issue that we're fighting here. Efraim, God bless you, brother. And may we have a peaceful end to this war. May every living hostage be returned to their families. And shalom from Israel.